What's up guys, Sebastian here. Today we are looking at another Traveler CCG deck profile. This is another constructed deck that I built myself, and it's built around the type HD Bounty Hunter. So let's start with the ship itself. The ship is very similar to the type S Scout. It has the same stats over here, so you get 5 for potentially taking the initiative in the turn, 2 for its jump speed, 1 for attack value, 0 for defense value. It generates you 1 advanced capability for either warfare or personnel. It can take up to 3 crew members, and it can only take 1 of each of the upgrade slots. But why we really want to play this card is this effect here. Gain 1 victory point at the end of any round in which any opponent has jettisoned a crew member. And of course that is what we're going to try to take advantage of. Now it's very important with this card to understand that this does become a much better ship to run if you play against more than one opponent. So in 2-player games, it's okay. I won with this deck, but 3-4 player games is where this really shines, because you have a higher potential of always jettisoning crew members. And certainly in 3-4 player games, you might not even have to do that much of a work, because your opponents might be, at each other's throats as well, and you're just gonna come in and reap the benefits of that. So if we start with the adventure slash complication deck, as usual, I'm gonna run through them, but if you want to read through the entire card, you can of course pause the video here. So we got 2 copies of Troublesome Bounty, and the complication is more bling, more bother. 2 copies of Mid-Passage Mark, and the complication is letting things slide. 2 copies of Showing the Flag, and Buccaneer is on the other side. 2 copies of Red Team, Flare Up on the complication end. 2 copies of Refugee Resettlement and Customs Inspection as that particular complication. Got 2 copies of Relief Ops and Clank on the other side. 2 weapons testing with Ralkai's Corsairs as a complication. In the presence of mine enemies, also 2 copies, and Firefight as the complication. We got 2 copies of Reach for the Stars and Firmware Update Errors as the complication. And then finally we got 2 copies of Home One Last Time, with the complication, the adventure being Home One Last Time, complication being Inoperable Amenities. I had a bit of a difficulty picking up the right ones, because you certainly don't have too many warfare related complications, adventures, but I did put in whatever I could, and luckily the rest I could pretty much fill out with personnel related adventures. I didn't pay that much attention to the complications. I was just kind of happy to put this together. Certainly the idea is that we're not just, of course, hunting down our opponent's crew, but we're also going after adventures and trying to deal with them. In terms of jump distance, I certainly don't have any problems paying 1 or maybe 2. We have a jump of 2, so really you only have to pay 3 to get to Reach for the Stars or Home One Last Time. But we do also run drop fuel tanks, which allows us to bring the value of these down to 0, and that basically allows us to get there for 0 investment. Moving on to the captain's deck, let's start with the connections. Don't know why I put the ship away. I want to show you guys the ship, that it's what we're building around. So starting with connections, we are rocking 3 copies of Encro Bartender. It is just an absolutely fantastic card. It doesn't have any restrictions when you can use it. You tap it, you move up to 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck, then draw that many cards. This is extremely good because it comes down for free, and it allows you to see more cards also for free once per turn. It is by far in my opinion, the best card that you can use recurringly, and you're not you're not wasting any cards from your hand to get other cards. You're just recirculating the cards you don't want right now, and hopefully get cards that you do need a bit more. And the best credit generator, Finch and Cho CPAs, you will have seen this in my Safari ship deck profile as well. Particularly in this deck, it is an absolute powerhouse of making money. Because after you gain a victory point, add the bookkeeping counter to this card. Now, you go ahead, if you can solve an adventure, that will give you 1 instance of victory points. Then for each subplot you can solve, you also get 1 bookkeeping counter per instance. So if you can solve the main adventure here, you get 4, you get a counter. If you can then solve the psionic trained skill subplot, you get another one, you get another counter on this. And then if you can solve the trained pilot, you get another counter on this one. And of course, remember, if you play the deck right and you jettison one of your opponent's crew members, then that will grant you 1 victory point at the end of any round, which will also get you a bookkeeping counter on this card. So you can get, you will easily get 3 bookkeeping counters on this card if you can reliably solve the adventure you're going after and 1 of these subplots at least, and jettison one of your opponent's crew members. So I absolutely love Finch and Cho, and it generates a huge amount of advantage just by allowing you to then tap it and then just spend bookkeeping counters as money. These are the only 2 connections we're running in this deck. The reason being is these really help you with card manipulation, deck manipulation, and these give you extra money, and that's what we need these for. Moving on to ship upgrades, as I said, we are running drop fuel tanks, 2 copies to be specific. Again, 0 drop, which is really important, but you can spend it for 2 money. And in the adventure phase, you can jettison it and reduce the distance on target adventure to 0 until the end of the phase. You want to be careful because your opponent can also take advantage of this. The best time to play this if your opponent's committed already to an adventure and they kind of invested enough so they wouldn't abandon it and then perhaps go to one where you use your fuel tanks. But really I only tend to use this one to get to home one last time or reach for the stars. I don't really want to pay 3 to get to any one of these 2 adventures, but you know, sometimes you might just have to do it. 2 copies of LSP multi-phased array, just because we do have a couple of adventures that require us to have 2 warfare tokens, so we can of course get that generated. What I like about this is that you can actually wait to the resolution phase if you have a particular complication where you need one of these tokens, and also pretty good against type S scout decks where they might have a survey that you decide to go after, and then you can use this multi-phase array to give you a fighting chance to resolve that, to solve that adventure. We also have 3 copies of the Sure Shot missile turret. This is predominantly in here to resolve target Corsair complications. I really don't like Buccaneer. I don't like to deal with that card unless absolutely necessary, and just jettisoning this one, it solves the problem. But it can also be good just to gain some extra firepower if your opponent decides to go pirate on you. Then you can at least fire back with not 1 but 2, which is always more than enough to often deter your opponent to actually try to do piracy against you. And then finally we got 3 drop capsules in the deck. This is a bit of a finishing card because it's rather expensive. That 3 is a relatively large cost, but it does have trifling, which means you won't have any problem to put it onto your ship. Not that Oh yeah, the multi-phased arrays are the same subtype. But yeah, you can jettison it and add the warfare token into a resource pool, or tap it, disperse it, gain 1 victory point after resolving a warfare adventure. So, if you just need that one last victory point, you can get that done. But again, it also works well with Vincenzo CPAs, because there will be another instance of gaining a victory point, which means it will be another instance of gaining a bookkeeping counter on this card. So this is it for our ship upgrades. Move them down here. And let's move on to the core of the deck, which of course, as always, are the crew. I'm running 2 copies of Jeeves. Trifling is really important, whether you run the Bounty Hunter or you run the Scouts. Trifling crew members are just inevitably going to end up in your deck because they don't take up extra space. Now, I don't have a problem with social skill tokens costing you 2 extra, but certainly the personnel capability counter tax is a bit annoying on Jeeves, but it does allow us to have train level jack of all trades. So it's certainly a trade-off that you gotta make, which it's not uncommon for this game. Talking about jack of all trades, we do have 1 copy of Aukyu, Discreet Scholar, which will straight away net you 1 jack of all trades. Remember, you gotta choose it. There isn't a jack of all trades token. You gotta choose it. If you choose medic, science, or tech, you have to jettison him though, so bear that in mind. Not that our particular adventures require many of those tokens, but you never know what your opponent's going to throw at you with complications. As we moved on to the 1 costs, I might as well go ahead and talk about Tulsi. Now, Tulsi is an expert level combat guy. He's also resilient, which means without paying anything, he regains all his health in the ready phase, but he can only use gear that has primitive on it. Not really a problem for us because we only run 2 gear, as you're gonna see very soon. One of them is the grenade, which is a staple in any deck, and the other one is the combat knife, which is primitive, so we can use that. We got the good old faithful Dr. Zet Usreich. He gives us expert level medic, and of course in the action phase you can tap him to restore all wounds to target crew member. Again, I feel that he's very much a staple in any deck, really. Just that effect that well, let me put it this way: you pay 2 to get him down, and immediately the first turn he's down, he basically pays his cost, because if you can pay his cost. If you got a crew member with 3 health but has 2 wounds on it, you tap him, you immediately restore the same amount of health you would be able to restore in your ready phase if you pay 2. But now you're gonna be netting that expert level medic as well. And now we get to the muscle of the deck. Now we get to the bounty hunters on the bounty hunter deck. So we got 2 copies of Flint here. Flint is amazing. He is expert underworld, and he can be tapped if you pay 2, inflict 1 wound on target crew member, but if they lack underworld, then you actually inflict an additional wound. So this is where we get into bounty hunting stuff and ensuring that we get that extra victory point every single round. So 2 copies of Flint. Also 2 copies of Vorn Drossus. He is a train level combat guy, combatant. You can upgrade his skill to an expert level if you tap him. It replaces it. It doesn't give you an extra one. There's an errata out on this card. Or you can tap him, pay 2, and inflict 2 damage on target crew member. So again, there you go. Just inflicting damage is what we want to do. Now, we got 2 copies of Dez. Dez, I particularly like. You run out Dez, you search your deck for your grenade. Dez gets the grenade, you blow up the grenade. The grenade costs normally 2. but not with Daz, because Daz will not only search your deck but also attach it for free, and then you can immediately tap Daz, jettison the grenade, and inflict 2 damage up to 2 different crew members controlled by the same captain that ideally is going to be your opponent. Where Daz also shines is if you decide to play Lost and Found, which you can do with Daz. Well, Daz has integral for any gear attached to him. So if you steal something and attach it to Daz, your opponent's not going to be able to then steal it again because Daz will keep hold of that. So really nice little combo there with Daz and Lost and Found. Okay, and then finally, of course, we do. Well, not finally, we got 2 more crew members here, but definitely my favorite, Gorbash. Gorbash, who is not going to be your bear bomb, and indeed he is going to still be your bear bomb. Um, I love bears, and I love Ursa characters in the game, and the fact that there's like only 2 characters, 2 crew members in the entire game that have a health of 4. But one of them is not really going to take any advantage of it because more often than not you're gonna be discard from your hand and paying 1 to inflict 2 damage on target crew member. Again, very much like Onkro, this doesn't have a particular time. You can do this anytime you want. I do feel this card might be a little bit broken because, well, imagine just you got Flint out. Yes, your opponent may have an underworld character. You go ahead, pay the 2, tap Flint, and then you go ahead and discard Gorbash from your hand, pay 1. Now you are most likely going to be able to take care of most of the characters in the entire game because most characters have no more than 3 health. And then that will guarantee you your extra victory points at the end of the round. And then finally, because showing off is what we do on this channel, I do have a copy of Euphrasia Flatter. It's just such an amazing card, and the only crew member that exists in foil. Not only does she exist in foil, she only exists in foil. You get an expert jack of all trades. I mean, just an expert jack of all trades is immediately ridiculous, and she gets to reuse any one of your heroic actions on a train level, and then disperses that. So you get multiple use out of those absolutely wonderful, beautiful heroic actions that we have in the deck. So this is it for the crew. And I've already dipped into the gear. And indeed, I've already dipped into the heroic actions as well that we run in the deck. But we're going to go through them all nevertheless. So you get a full-on experience for my Bounty Hunter deck. Perhaps my favorite gear, Xeno Poison. I said this in the opening profile as well for Empress Morava. I adore the art on this card, and I adore the effect, and it just fits the bill again quite nicely for the Bounty Hunter deck. So Xeno Poison is a hindrance. Obviously, you attach it to your opponent's crew member. It also has integrals, so they can move it around. And then when you attach it, you tap the attached crew member, and in the ready phase, inflict 1 wound on attached crew member at the beginning of the phase, and armor cannot reduce the damage inflicted by this card. We got 3 of these. They don't cost you anything, so they're 0 cost cards. They're unsavory. Doesn't really mean much for us here, but you can search for unsavory stuff with the town bar, star town bar. But I love it. I love it so much, and you might attach it, and then you tap one of your opponent's crew members. Ready phase, they take a wound. Your opponent might not bother to heal it if they can't get rid of the Xeno Poison card, and that's unfortunate as well. And then you come in with a Gorbash and immediately finish them off. And that's the plan. That's why we got Xeno Poison in here. It's an absolutely brilliant, fantastic card. Love it. I said we got Combat Knife in the deck, and it is actually at 2 copies when a crew member with combat or veteran is put into play under your control. If this card is in your discard pile, you may attach it to that crew member without paying this card's cost, and there's a very good reason why it's a 2 cost card as well. You can actually, so what you want to do is pay for something with this card from your hand, and then you can basically immediately bring it back. So good example for that, let's say we got Vorndrusus, you want to play him, so I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna play Vorndrusus, pay with a combat knife, and then when he comes into play, you immediately attach it to him. Maybe not the most ideal. You ideally want to have combat knife on Tulsi because obviously primitive weapon on the primitive guy. Vorndrusus, you kind of just want to use the pay to tap to inflict 2 damage, but you know you got multiple potentials here. I like to see this combat knife on Tulsi, but indeed, if you don't want to have Tulsi in the deck and you don't want to have combat knife on the deck, that's fine as well. You're not losing out on much. It's just I wanted to try it out. But what is absolutely staple for any deck, 3 copies of Fragmentation Grenade. Uh, it's just such a good card, especially with Dez. Dez will search it out from your deck, play it onto himself for free, and then you can also use Dez because Dez doesn't even need to tap. You know, it's a enter the game effect, and yeah, you play Dez, you search this, put it on Dez, go to the action phase, immediately use Dez, jettison it, and deal 2 to your opponent's guys. So that's how we get a bunch of victory points. I love that little combo there. Right, with this, now let's start and look at the heroic actions. Guess what I'm going to start with? Of course, I'm going to start with 3 copies of Aggravated Assault. That's one of the reasons why we have Thulsi in here as well, is because he gives us expert level combat, and indeed expert level combat will inflict 3 damage to target crew member, which I already said pretty much gets rid of 99% of the crew members in the game. You can also use this with Vorndrusus, but it's only going to be 2 damage, and we got enough cards already deal 2 damage. You can also bring a Gorbash into play. This is where he can shine with that expert level if you don't see Tulsi and you need to have a Gorbash in play. Not ideal, but he can Aggravated Assault for sure. So yeah, that's another way to get Aggravated Assault out. But ideally Tulsi. Tulsi is your main man. He's the one you want to see. He is the one who wants to do a bunch of Aggravated Assaults. I've already shown you Lost and Found, but yes, we do have 3 copies of that as well. I think this is another very important card for most of the decks. Being able to jettison target gear is really important. It allows you to get rid of hindrances, or if your opponent has something really nasty in play, let's say a Neuron Gun, then you can just, with the trained level Underworld guy, you're going to get rid of it. Now, if you have an expert level, again where Dez comes and Flint comes into the play, you can attach target gear card to the crew member who's losing and finding. So a lot of flexibility in Lost and Found. Definitely a great card. And indeed, I get a lot of good use out of this. I also have 3 copies of Contingency in here. I don't know if this card will remain in the deck. I don't hate what it does, but I am also not a massive fan of what it does. On a trained level Underworld, you search your deck for an event and attach it to this crew member, and then you return attached crew member to your hand to play. The event cost for 0. So you have to resolve all of this in this current action. So it could be good to get Des back into your hand. That's the only reason why I'm really running this. If I want to sort of chain into more grenades, then yes, you can use Contingency here. Where I kind of like this a little bit more is the expert level, where you can actually dig through your discard pile to get an event from. You know, now that I read it out loud, it's actually a good card, but it's just a little bit. I guess it's a little bit more difficult to get it out in some cases. But it does get definite. So at the beginning of the game, it's good because it allows you to keep reusing this. And then later in the game, it's good because it allows you to dig through your discard pile and get events from there. Talking about events, let's finish up this deck profile with these. So we got 2 copies of Freelancer. Really, really good card, especially again for Type HT Bounty Hunter, where the crew member size is extremely limited. To be able to bring somebody back from your discard pile with trifling until the end of the turn is fantastic. Yeah, you disperse the crew member at the end of the turn, but it's not really a massive thing. And you know, if you need a very particular skill token, then you can obviously bring back one of the guys that gives you jack of all trades. So that's why Freelancer is particularly good. I love cold engines. The 3 cost that you can pay with this card is fantastic, but also just set a ship's printed speed to 0 until the end of the round, so you're basically guaranteed to take initiative for that particular turn. And if your opponent, I haven't come across this yet, but if that ship has a maneuver drive ship upgrade attached to it, you can pay 1 and jettison that. So you get like double duty out of this card in some cases. Got 2 copies of Consultant Call just to get that odd train skill token to the resource pool. Yeah, and we got 3 WAP advisors for that basic capability token, just in case something goes wrong. And in case you run into something that does require you to have double capabilities, which are Relief Ops, where we need 2, Red Team, and that's it. So this is it, guys. This is the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Type HT Bounty Hunter. I've had an absolutely brilliant time testing this deck. It definitely can do with a bit of tweaks. I am certainly not 100% convinced on the crew lineup, but it's always difficult on these smaller crew size ships anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys will tune in again for upcoming videos. But up until then, this is Boss Saiyan signing out. I'll see you on the mains. Peace.